Hello everyone, and welcome to Slipjoint Sawyer. Today we're going to be taking a look at a custom Victorinox Swiss Army knife that was made by myself. Before we jump into that, I want to give a big shout out to Dan over at Blade Bridge Customs. Now he's helped me with tips and tricks on how to get started in making these custom Swiss Army knives. He's also provided me with lots of parts at very sort of reasonable prices, and he's gifted me a lot of stuff as well. But if you're not familiar with Dan, Blade Bridge Customs is his Instagram name. He's got a website at bladebridgecustoms.co.uk, and he's also on Etsy at Vintage Tool Goods. Now these all will be linked in the description below this video. I would normally show a business card, but Dan, when you see this, please can you send me some more? I've given them all out and I should have kept one for myself, so apologies for that, but all the information will be linked below, where you can find him, how you can contact him, everything you're going to need to know. But he's a fantastic guy to deal with, makes some wonderful custom work as well. But let's jump straight into it. Now, I've made one here. This is one of the first ones I made. I have made it with sort of brass liners and things, but we'll go through that as we do. So I really love having the files on a Swiss Army knife, but sometimes I find the little pen blade size file a little bit too small. So I went ahead and I created this sort of thing here. Now, this was named by my good friend John over at Thrifty Kniffy as the Executive Senior. And we'll go through some of the tools, the functionality, and the sort of the design choices I made while making it. Now, we have black plus scales on here, and you can see they have been sort of given like a rough sanding, because these weren't brand new scales. They were all scratched up and didn't look the best. So I gave them a sort of a grain look to them. I don't know if you can see that there, but I mean, I've been using it constantly pretty much. So they're all scratched up again, but I just gave it a bit of a buff with some emery cloth just to give them a bit of a matte look. I also opened up the fourth slot on these, and I created sort of a smaller pair of tweezers with like a finer point for maybe removing splinters, things like that. And we also get the tweezers I've kept on this one, the toothpick, sorry. And then being the plus, you obviously get the pen on the back here too. And I went for a 3-layer design, so I kept the corkscrew so I could have the mini eyeglasses screwdriver. And of course, I went for the pin with the ball head in there as well. Now, I made a couple of different choices here. I did keep the hook, mainly because I actually find it quite useful. I do use it for quite a few bits and pieces, carrying things, anything that's sort of rough on your hand to carry. And I do use it to pull things with as well. Maybe if I'm sort of, I don't know, tying a knot in some leather or something, or stretching something out, the hook works better than sort of damaging or rubbing against your fingers for that. I did get rid of the punch though. I didn't go with the punch for this one. I find this sort of small flathead screwdriver much more useful. Use this for many different things. Little tiny pry bar. It's actually really good for taking the scales off Swiss Army knives as well, because it's very sort of fine down there. You can sort of get in at the very edge and slowly pry your way around the outside, and they will pop off. And you can see that sort of lines up pretty well with the cutout for the punch. And you can see obviously it's not 100% in line because it's not meant to fit there, but it has great action and great snap as well. On the front then, I went for some scissors. One of my most used tools on a Swiss Army knife. I know a lot of people think scissors don't belong on a knife if you've got a blade, but honestly I find them super useful. If I'm in an office environment, I will always get the scissors out first before the knife. It just saves any unwanted comments, especially in the UK. But I mean, even some places in the US, people might get offended by getting a knife out in an office environment. Not saying you would, but a lot of people don't seem to think it's appropriate. So I will always go for the scissors first. Just makes it a bit less to cause any sort of conflict, things like that. You can see the brass liners in there as well. Pretty happy with how this turned out. Now, I have made a couple of these now. I did send one over to John at Thrifty Kniffy and Tony's Ponies, or should I say Blade in Wales now, bought one of these in the Discord, and he very much enjoys it, and I really appreciate him picking that up, because one of my first ones, it's nice to get on sort of the market for getting these things out, and people really enjoy them. In the middle then, I went for the large file. As I mentioned, I prefer the larger file. Just seems to work better for me. Can use the sort of the end as a nail cleaner as well, and it's much more useful for me to have a full-size file on there rather than the smaller one. Mainly because I like to retain the pen blade. I find that really useful as well for opening packages. But you can see the action on that is pretty good. Pretty happy with how this turned out. There's no play at all. Nice and tight. but you get a nice smooth action on there. No hang-ups, nothing getting caught. See, that fits in there nicely. Pretty centralized, not too bad. Could it be better? Yeah, but I mean, for one of my first attempts, I think that's pretty good. As I mentioned, I retained the pen blade on the back. See, this is one that had a little bit of use, but I was just making this out of parts that I had laying around. I didn't want to use anything brand new if I wasn't going to be sure if it would work or not. I didn't want to waste any parts. See, pen blade on there, nice edge. I put on the flat stone, or whetstone I should say, and it is screaming sharp. Action is good on that as well. Nice snap on the way back and on the close. And for that pen blade, standard sort of pen blade length, we're about 1.5 cutting length with about a 1.6 inch full blade. So very UK friendly, that blade. And then next up, so when I did originally build this, I used to use the plain blade. I didn't bother doing any sort of file work or anything, but it's just a standard Victorinox spear, which is full blade length of 2.75 or 2.7 thereabouts, and then a cutting edge of right about 2.4. So again, that's very UK legal as well, and that's what I was going for. I didn't want anything lock-in, didn't want anything I wouldn't be able to carry. Now, back to the blade. So I built it, put a plain blade in there, and I wanted to try some file work, but I didn't want to ruin one that I was going to be making for someone else before I did like any sort of testing on file work. So I just clamped the blade in the vise and tried some of my own. It's not perfect, but I think I did an alright job. Just adds a little bit of something different to the knife. See, I tried to go for the sort of the zigzag pattern on there. Now, is it perfect? No. Can Dan do it better? Yes. If you want file work, go to Dan. He's way better than me. But that was just sort of a test run. Does it affect the knife for me in looks? No. And I'm going to keep this knife and love it forever because it's one of the first ones I made. I was actually really impressed with how I managed to sort of get it done. Now, the peening is not the best. I'm not the best at that. I'm very heavy-handed. I've got a lot better since making this one, but the original sort of couple I made at the start were a little bit, not shoddy, just could have been a little bit better. And I did have to end up using a sander to sort of flatten my peening down a bit, just so everything was sort of fit nice. But it's hidden behind the scales anyway. You're never going to see it, and it doesn't really bother me with it being for myself. Take a look at those brass liners again. They are really nice. Something adds a bit of class, brass liners, to a Swiss Army knife. But a really nice selection of tools. It's pretty much my ideal tool set for a Swiss Army knife. I wanted to make something that I would be happy to use and carry every single day. And this does get a lot of pocket time. So we have pen blade, scissors, large file. We have the large blade as well. And on the back you get the hook, the little flathead screwdriver, the corkscrew, pin, small screwdriver inside the corkscrew, keyring of course, which I put on this little dangler and then looped the Victorinox lanyard down. Now when that sits in the pocket, this hangs out, easy to sort of grab and go for it. I found this is pretty much how I've been carrying all my Swiss Army knives recently. You can see I've got a couple of them sort of set up like this, the ones that I carry. But there we go guys, that's a review of a Swiss Army knife that I constructed myself. I really hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you'd like to see some more videos, or maybe even making a knife that I do on the channel. So I'd love to sort of do that sort of thing. But if you enjoyed this, please be sure to like, subscribe and ring that bell for notifications, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out. Matt's got a channel, man sharp as a blade. Slipjoint Sawyer is the name he made. Pocket knives until they flow with flair. Restorations done with craftsman's care.